Hello, everybody, and welcome along to this digital showcase session at Leaders Week. I'm David Cushnan, and over the next few minutes, we'll be exploring a digital project and a shift in strategy undertaken by one of the top teams in the Championship, English football's second tier. West Bromwich Albion have been Premier League regulars in recent years and are hoping for a swift return this season, but with its passionate fan base and long tradition, it's a classic example of an English football club looking to continually modernise and refresh its approach. And with me to tell us more is Laura Gabbidon, Head of Marketing at West Brom, and alongside Laura is George Crabb, Managing Director of Other Media, the digital strategy agency with whom West Brom worked on this digital overhaul. Welcome to you both. Good to have you with us. Laura, let's start with you. Tell us about the problem at West Brom that you were trying to find a solution to here.
Yeah, so over the years, we'd obviously, as all businesses had, we've been kind of expanding our digital portfolios, and we'd sort of got ourselves to a position where it was lots of independent systems working in silo, and we wanted to kind of go on this digital journey that was going to bring everything together so they work together. It would allow us to enhance our digital offering, the service received by fans, the commercialization opportunities, and we felt that the best way to kickstart that project was to take control of our digital assets with the main flagship website and the app. So we took the decision to come out of EFL Digital and go along on our own with Other Media.
And tell us a little bit about the scope and scale of the project that you undertook, because it was quite wide-ranging.
Absolutely, yeah. So it touched kind of all areas of the business. So obviously the flagship website in itself is a very complex project when you take into account streaming, match data, all those features that you want to have available on there. But we also wanted these systems to talk to our other platforms, i.e. ticketing, retail, bring in single sign-on, all those sorts of features that are kind of commonplace in the modern day for other businesses that we haven't really tapped into at football. Certainly in West Brom, and I think being within the EFL digital arrangement was a bit restrictive in that we couldn't introduce single sign-on. By doing that, that's opened a kind of myriad of floodgates for us where we can introduce a lot more benefits for fans as a result, with the core of it being the main website and the features that can deliver.
George, let's bring you in, because West Brom brought Other Media in to work on this project together. Is the type of challenge that Laura was outlining there representative of what you hear from other football clubs? How unique a project was this?
Yeah, I think a lot of clubs are facing similar challenges. As Laura said, within the EFL deal, I think there's some frustrations about not really owning the customer relationship, about sort of access to data and analytics, and being able to push things further that clubs really want to do and that fans are expecting. I think for lots of clubs, COVID has really accelerated that as well. And there's now even more focus on digital as a way of engaging with fans through the club's own channels. Lots of people have spent a lot of time building up big social followings, and it's about how do you drive that? What do you do with that social audience? How can you monetize it? How can you engage with it? And digital gives you the ability to do that in the club's own channels. So it's about engaging with the fans with more timely content, relevant content, interactivity, participation, voting, ticketing, retail, all the things that Laura's mentioned, as well as then commercializing those commercial opportunities. Because clearly, if you build these systems correctly, websites, apps, voice, all the rest of it, that also opens up some other commercial opportunities for the club as well. So it's the direct sales and the indirect sort of commercial partnership opportunities. So yeah, very similar challenges, I think, for clubs. And as I say, COVID's just accelerated that.
Laura, tell us a little bit more about some of the main objectives as you went into this project. And then George will come to you to talk about what Other Media do and what Other Media's initial steps are when faced with a project like that.
Yeah, so for the size of club we are, we can't get away from the fact that generating revenue is important. It is for all clubs, but certainly for a club like ours that's kind of in between Championship and Premier League quite frequently, it had to be a commercial decision. We had to be confident we were going to make a return on our investment. And obviously there were a number of other benefits, but we had to be sure of that. So the key objective for us was to make sure that, one, we were generating a return from the investment in the project, but also it was going to give us the opportunity to enhance revenues in other areas, i.e. retail, ticketing, etc. One of the things we've been able to introduce is a much better offering for our potential and actual sponsors and partners, whether that's new sponsorship packages. We did introduce one package in particular, the Live Match Centre sponsor, which brought in Uber Eats last season. We wouldn't have been able to bring that sponsor in with what we would have had available on our previous platform. So it's definitely opened those sorts of doors for us. I think being able to control the advertising on our website as well, we've seen quite a lot of interest, and certainly we've generated higher levels of revenues than we had in the EFL Digital from an advertising perspective. We saw incredible results in terms of referrals to our e-commerce platforms. Obviously ticketing we didn't have last year, but with retail we saw high levels of traffic, high levels of conversions. It was really encouraging to see the commercial returns on that. But then obviously, of course, there's more to it. And we also wanted to improve the fan experience. We wanted a website that reflected our brand more effectively. And other media, I think, have done a great job in turning our brand a bit more digital. They've been sympathetic to it while enhancing it. I'm really delighted with how that's come across on both the website and the app platforms. Obviously, the better experiences in terms of the features we can include, the content we can include, the single sign-on just makes a better user experience. So yeah, there was multiple objectives, but the key ones being revenue generation and obviously improving the fan experience where we could.
And actually, just before we come back to you, George, for the other media perspective on what you do initially, Laura, I wonder, as you talk through all of that, new sponsorship inventory, all the other elements that you mentioned, is there an impact on resource and personnel and time internally at the club as you've made these changes?
I mean, yeah, it's a huge project. So there was a lot of work involved, and it involved a lot of different areas of the business. We were very careful at the start of the project to ensure we included all stakeholders. So we met with all departments. So for example, ticketing might not have a direct requirement from the main platform, but we wanted to understand what they might need and what they'd like to get from it. That helped us build the kind of scope of what other media were going to help us deliver and how we wanted the platforms to interact with each other. So yeah, there was definitely impacts within the business. I would say it wasn't so draining that we needed additional staff to deliver it. We've managed to do that with who we've had in-house. But COVID also helped. We were due to go live sort of in the middle of the first lockdown. We delayed that obviously because we had to finish off the season with EFL Digital when the restart happened. But that did give us a lot of time to kind of spend probably more than we would have done previously with the little attention to detail when building the site, editing through the CMS, etc. So yeah, there was a lot of work, but it was managed internally.
George, from another media perspective, when you get a brief like this, get a project like this, what are your first moves?
I think, as Laura says, it's really to understand what the success criteria are. What does success look like for a club? What are they trying to do? And different clubs have different pressures. So, that's, as Laura says, around ticket sales. It could be around season ticket renewals. It could be around international expansion and growing an overseas market. It's around retail and making that journey better, or increasing revenues. It could be around hospitality and making that journey better and increasing hospitality revenues. And it's they could also be some other sort of success criteria about sort of awards and recognition. But really, I think at the centre of it is the fans' needs, the fan experience. So trying to understand what that optimal fan experience looks like. For most clubs, there's a lot of things in common, but for each club, there's always something that's a particular quirk of that club to do with the history, to do with the fan base or whatever. So we really try and get behind the brand as well, the history of the club, and as Laura says, trying to make sure that unique identity is really brought through online. So yeah, it's understanding the needs of the club, understanding the needs of the fans, and then pulling that all together in across all those different digital touch points in a way that's sympathetic to the brand and really delights the fans as well. I think we've seen a lot of sort of cookie cutter approaches to these types of sites. And I think fans really appreciate when people take the extra time and efforts to understand what it is that they like and build things with them in mind.
And how does that understanding manifest itself? Is that about being in meetings with all the departments? Is that about sort of sharing of data and information? How does it work in practice?
It's many things. These digital projects tend to bring together all the different departments within a club. Sometimes for the first time, that people are talking together about what the objectives are and how all the different departments can contribute to that. It's about talking to the fans, understanding what their concerns are, or what their needs are, and it's about looking at current performance. So looking at current site analytics, looking at current social media channels, and looking at what's happening with the current setup. Most of the branding work that we do, a lot of branding agencies sort of stop at digital, and so taking that on and saying, okay, how can this be animated? How can we introduce loading states or things that might seem fairly trivial, but if you get all of those different touch points right, there's a sort of an implied quality, and I think fans really pick up on that, and it gives them confidence to then use the app or to use the websites, that this is a proper piece of communication that they can trust and engage with.
Laura, how visibly different did things look as the project was completed for fans, or was it much more about the experience, speed of access, that sort of thing?
Those things obviously really important, but visibly did look very different. I think, understandably, the nature of EFL Digital is it was that cookie cutter template type delivery. So to actually really personalize the website, it looked so different. We were so excited when we first saw the designs because it really felt like us. And there hadn't been that opportunity to bring that kind of life to the platform before. So I think initially, as soon as you went on the platforms, you'd feel like you were in a West Brom digital world. So that was really good. But then absolutely, in terms of the experience navigating through the site, the user journeys, the content we'd put on, it all felt just to a higher standard. Over the past, we've been live for just over 12 months now, and we've been able to do more with content, just think a bit more about the information we make available to fans on the site. So there's a lot more kind of help content as well, and certainly I think during COVID that was really important because offices weren't open and phone lines weren't open, so fans could find the information they wanted a lot more easily. So yeah, absolutely, from a visual perspective and from a user journey perspective, I think instantly they would have seen improvements.
You touched on the fairly standardized approach that a lot of club websites in particular have had. I wonder whether there was anything during this process in undertaking the project that you found particularly challenging or maybe particularly surprising. Were there bits and pieces that you looked at in a completely different way simply through going through the process?
I think because we've been so used to certain formats, that to almost have this world opened up to us where we could do what we wanted, it did make us think of things differently. And obviously the guys at Other Media, who are the digital experts, they'd advise us and suggest things which made a lot of sense that potentially we hadn't thought of previously. I think one of the things that I really liked about Other Media was that they have their ClubCast tool, which is what is sort of replicated across different clubs, but the front end is completely personalizable. You wouldn't know necessarily that Other Media, who also do Cardiff and Swansea, our websites don't look anything alike. So even just using the same software doesn't mean that you're still following that cookie cutter template. I can't say that today. It was absolutely a challenge, but a really enthralling one where we learned so much. And so the guys at Other Media definitely kind of directed us down the right path to ensure we were making the right decisions when we were structuring and building and designing the platforms.
George, maybe elaborate a little bit on that ClubCast system platform. How should we describe it? How does it work?
It's a platform. It's a centralized content management system, and having worked with lots of different clubs, we know that most clubs need most things the same, so a live match center, news and teams and fixtures and results and those sorts of things. But by having a centralized system, we can then also add some functionality to that everybody benefits from. So, on the app side, we've got match predictors and score predictors, we've got quizzes, we've got voting and man of the match and polls and things like that to try and really engage the fans. So although it's a centralized platform, these modules then really sort of push the functionality and the engagement. And as Laura says, we then design that so that each club looks and feels different, and we can then personalize that to a club or add in particular functionality if a particular club needs that. But it means that we can get up and running fairly straightforwardly and fairly quickly, and spend the time really making that feel very personal to the clubs and to the supporters. And so that's our approach. It seems to be getting some fans and some momentum. So we're really pleased with how things are going.
Laura, let's talk results. What were your big measures of success going into the project, and how has it worked?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think obviously key, we wanted to see improved traffic numbers, dwell times, etc. on the site. We wanted to ensure people were engaging with the platform more. It's difficult because when we're in the Premier League, we naturally see a drop off in digital engagements, which tends to surprise people. My theory being that coverage of the Premier League is everywhere, but in the Championship it's a bit more sparse, so you need to go on our digital platforms. So we saw less traffic in the Premier League than we'd seen the previous season in the Championship. However, it wasn't that significant, so it kind of held its own. We've obviously only had 2 months of this new season, but actually I've just been doing some analysis of the last 2 months and found that August was our highest ever month since 2017 for page hits, impressions and traffic to the site. So it's going really well. For the first month we'd had over 1 million page impressions on the app, so it's absolutely going in the right direction. I mean, in terms of the app, I think we've had triple the downloads that we had of the previous app. And that's with not massive campaigns to push it, if I'm honest. We've just kind of put it out to fans, told them it's there. We haven't gone really heavy on marketing it. So I'm absolutely delighted with those results. Commercially, it's been really good. It's opened new revenue streams for us. I'm monitoring the referrals more effectively potentially than I was on the previous site, but I'm seeing like really encouraging signs that the referrals from our platform to the retail site, for example, are generating sales. The key for me was we'd introduced a few sort of call to actions, if you like, throughout the site towards retail, which were like, for example, in the live match centre, when you look at fixtures, we can add buttons. And last year I couldn't sell tickets, so we just sort of added shirts, links to buy shirts from there. And we saw I think it was something like over £10,000 worth of sales referrals, which for something that wasn't just a feature on the site, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. I thought that was really good. The fact that we'd identified these touch points through the site that could have a really unintrusive commercialization angle to them. And it really, really delivered. So I'm excited for this year to see the impact on tickets. And obviously we've got streaming because we're in the Championship. That's going really well, better than I'd anticipated 2 months in. So yeah, signs are absolutely encouraging from a commercial perspective as well.
Very good to hear. George, speaking a little more widely, what does the optimum relationship between agency and club when you're undertaking this type of project look like?
It's kind of trite to say it, but we always aim for a partnership approach, and where when we get that, and we don't always get that, but where that happens, it means that both sides are kind of enjoying the process and getting the benefits from that. I think that one of the key things to do is to make sure that there is support both from the board, but also from the wider club, from all the different departments in the club, and again, having everyone sort of feed in their requirements and understand what's possible, what the roadmap looks like is important. So setting those expectations up front and getting the buy-in is really, really important. The absolute key, though, is having a single point of contact at the club so that and at the agency as well, so that there's direct communication. We're not trying to sort of firefight on lots of different fronts, that there is an agreed roadmap, that there's no agreed development timetable. And in the case of with Laura been through a sort of similar process before, and so I think having that experience of what a good project looks like, where the bodies are buried, being able to sort of jump on a call and head off things before they were an issue, and to be able to have those kind of conversations. Look, we don't think this is working in this particular way that we've designed it. Should we change it? Yes. Should we try something new? Being able to have proper conversations about, look, let's build the best thing that we can build, and that might change over the course of the project, is really, really crucial. And that's, it's really about the communication, having regular meetings, regular catch-ups, showing progress on a regular basis, and making sure everyone's on board with where things are going. And as I say, if things need to change and adapt, that people are flexible to do that.
And Laura, I guess you've got that classic balancing act of managing the short-term, day-by-day, hour-by-hour, minute-by-minute decisions that need to be made, maybe hundreds of decisions about particular elements, whilst keeping absolutely firmly on course with the overall direction of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's difficult because there are multiple stakeholders involved, and they'll have different opinions, and some of the decisions are opinion based. They're not actual useful information. It's just, well, I don't like that, or I do like that. So yeah, I certainly had to kind of manage what needed additional input, what I could just sort of make a decision on, so we could get things moving. But I think it helped that I had a really good understanding of what people within the business wanted, so that when I was making decisions, I could ensure that I was making them in the best interests of everyone involved, really. I think, as George said, I'd sort of done a similar project before at a previous club, and that really helped because I understood the project plan and the stages of it. So I think that was quite invaluable, to make sure that internally I was involving people at the right times and knowing the decisions I could make that didn't need to get escalated. But we kept it going at a pretty decent pace. There weren't many things that held us up over the course of the project.
And is this the type of project that has an end point, or is it about continuous development and refinement kind of forever?
Yeah, I think it is, really, because I think even if, let's say, technology didn't change and we are where we are, there's still things you'd always want to be improving. But as we know, technology is changing daily. So I think whenever we'll get to a point where we think, great, we've done something, we're happy with this, something new will come out, a new opportunity, a new development, and we'll want to take advantage of that. So yeah, I don't think it ever ends. But certainly from our perspective anyway, it's very early stages of the project. We've still got other digital kind of solutions within the business that we could look to bring into this project as well. There's still things we haven't quite delivered that's on our sort of like 3 to 4 year roadmap, or we haven't sort of started on. So there's lots to be done, but generally I don't think you can ever finish a digital project, because there's always going to be something new.
George, we will have people watching us who work at football clubs at all sorts of levels of the game, from the biggest clubs to much smaller organizations. We're obviously talking here about a fairly significant digital strategy, digital overhaul, if you like. But are there relatively simple things that football clubs can do to enhance their digital strategy, perhaps at a lower price point? Or actually, is this kind of holistic project that we're talking about with Laura always the better option?
I think there are some simple things. I mean, obviously clubs are facing some challenges in terms of revenue and things like that. So, while this type of project, I think, is the best way to go, and the return on investment is quite clear, some clubs can't sort of go down that route, or want to sort of take it a step at a time, and that's fine. We've worked with clubs where they have an existing website, and we can augment that and add to that. I think the main thing I would say to clubs is think mobile. Okay, so most of the traffic to your website is now coming from mobile devices. People look at their phones hundreds of times a day. It's how people receive their news, how they communicate with their friends, how they shop. And so thinking mobile, and in particular apps, that's the way that you can make a difference to the supporters and to the fans and to how they interact with the club, and how you can unlock some new commercial opportunities as well. So you can start with that. You've probably got a website already. You can start with by thinking about an app. The way that we work, we try and avoid upfront fees and sort of heavy design and development costs, and sort of spread that out. So we're trying to make it more affordable for even the smaller clubs to work with us. But yeah, it tends to be that once you start those conversations about, okay, so what does that fan experience look like? Can we have a mobile ticket? You're starting to then include the other departments in the club, and so things can generally then sort of grow in terms of the scope of the project and then how you would tackle that. So from our point of view, it's better to do, if to do the widest possible project, to get the groundwork in and put the systems in that you can then develop and grow over time, rather than a sort of a piecemeal approach that can be more difficult to manage as time goes on.
And Laura, just finally, having been through this project, how do you reflect on it now? I mean, are there things that if you could do it again, you'd do differently? Is everything working as you had intended it to work? What's your overall assessment? Give George his appraisal.
Yeah, everything's working as expected. Obviously you get sort of little bugs as you go along, but they're all being resolved. There's no functionality that's not as we wanted it to be, so that's all great. I don't even think there's anything to change. It's gone really well. I say COVID did throw a little bit of a spanner in the works, but actually with hindsight that possibly helped us because it gave us a bit of extra time. Everything's gone great. I think we've already done quite a major development this year in addition to what we'd already done, to introduce some new functionality as a part of a membership scheme, so we could have kind of premium digital content behind a subscription wall effectively, and that's really exciting. So I think even within less than a year we've already started to evolve what we already wanted. Is a real good testament to how great the platform's been and how great the relationship's been with other media. So yeah, I don't think I changed anything.
It's good news, George. Give us your final reflections as well on particularly on the partnership and how that's grown and evolved over the project.
Yeah, it has been great actually. As I said before, some projects go really well, but not all of them do. This one has done, and we love working with Laura and with West Brom and the wider team there. So for us, it's really exciting to be at this stage where West Brom are a very ambitious club from a digital point of view, and being part of that and being able to influence that and deliver these things, and then see what that does for the club. Not everything that we will deliver is gonna strike a chord with fans, but being able to do that experimentation, look at the analytics, look at the data, and iterate on that, and being able to have a partner that is willing to sort of go on that journey and push things is really great for us. That's what we love to do. We sort of love to push ourselves from a design, a creative, and an innovation point of view, and being able to do that with a partner who kind of gets it and understands it and is willing to do that. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great place to be.
Really interesting case study. Really good of you to spend the time talking us through it. Good luck for the rest of the season, Laura, and thank you very much to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Probably Craig. You're trying to make me cry.
It's been my life since I left school.
We finished sixth the season before, so the improvement was obviously to kick on from there.
None of us could really play football. We were just a gang of just lads who could run around and just fight and scrap, but we were together.
I like it.